Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. The city of holy light had always been a beacon in the sky, a shimmering paradise built by angels that floated above the clouds, its radiance guiding the mortal world below. From this city, angels maintained the balance between heaven and earth, ensuring that light prevailed, that darkness stayed at bay, and that human faith never wavered. But in recent years, something had gone wrong. The light of the city had begun to fade, growing dimmer with each passing day. The once brilliant glow that illuminated both heaven and earth now barely pierced the clouds. As the light weakened, so did the world below. Crops withered, darkness spread, and humans, once united by faith, began to question the very existence of the divine. Archangel Michael, leader of the angelic host, stood at the edge of the city, his gaze fixed on the fading horizon. His golden armor reflected the last vestiges of sunlight, but even the light of the heavens seemed dim compared to the growing darkness within the city of holy light. "We are running out of time," Michael said softly, though there was no one around to hear him. He had already consulted the council of angels, but they were divided, unsure of how to proceed. Some believed that the fading light was a punishment from above, a divine sign that humanity no longer deserved the protection of the angels. Others, like Michael, believed that the connection between angels and mortals had weakened and needed to be restored. But how? For centuries, the city had drawn its light from the faith of mortals, their devotion powering the divine energies that kept the city afloat. Now, with the light fading, Michael knew they needed a different approach, to something more direct, more connected to the human world. In the distance, the great bell of the city's temple of purity tolled, signaling the gathering of the council. Michael turned and walked through the golden streets of the city, each step heavier than the last. As he neared the temple, the faint sound of wings fluttered overhead. The angels of the city, their wings once bright and glorious, now moved like shadows, their light dulled. Inside the temple, the council of angels awaited him. The chamber was grand, with towering pillars made of pure light, but even here, the light had begun to dim, casting long shadows on the faces of the gathered angels. "We cannot wait any longer," Michael began, his voice resonating through the hall. "The light is fading faster than we anticipated. If we do nothing, the city will fall, and with it, the mortal world." Seraphiel, an angel of great renown, stepped forward, his silver wings gleaming faintly. "Perhaps it is not for us to intervene. The light fades because humanity has lost its way. They no longer believe as they once did. Perhaps this is a sign that we should let them fall." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber, but Michael raised a hand, silencing them. "No," he said firmly. "The light fades because we have failed. We have grown distant from humanity. The connection between our worlds has weakened, and it is up to us to restore it." Seraphiel's eyes narrowed. "And how do you propose we do that?" "We are angels, not mortals. We cannot simply walk among them." "We don't need to," Michael replied. "But we can send someone who can." The room fell silent. The other angels exchanged uncertain glances. But Michael continued, "There is a Soula, a human Soula who may be able to restore the light. His name is Leon, and in life, he was a warrior of great courage and purity. He died defending his village from darkness, giving his life so that others might live. I believe he can succeed where we cannot." Seraphiel scoffed. "A mortal? You would trust the fate of our city, of the entire world, to a human soul?" Michael nodded. "Yes, because only a mortal can pass the trials needed to restore the light. We, as angels, are too far removed from their world, too disconnected." But Leon, a broken bar, he still carries the light of humanity within him. After a tense moment, the council agreed, though not without reluctance. Michael turned away from the gathering, already formulating a plan. There was no time to waste. Leon awoke to the sound of soft music, a gentle melody that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. He blinked and looked around, unsure of where he was. The last thing he remembered was fighting a great battle against a horde of dark creatures. He had stood alone on the walls of his village, sword in hand, determined to protect his home. But the darkness had been overwhelming, and he had fallen, his last memory that of blood and steel. Now, he stood in a place unlike any he had ever seen. The ground beneath him was made of soft clouds, glowing faintly with an inner light. Above him, a vast sky stretched out, filled with stars and brilliant streaks of light. And before him stood a figure, tall and imposing, with great golden wings and armor that shimmered like the sun. "Welcome, Leon," the figure said, his voice deep and resonant. "I am Michael, Archangel of the City of Holy Light." Leon blinked in confusion. "Am I a broken bar dead?" Michael nodded. "Yes. You died in battle, defending your people. Your courage and sacrifice have brought you here." "Where is here?" "This is the City of Holy Light," Michael explained. "A city built by angels, floating above the clouds. It is from here that we watch over the mortal world, ensuring that the light prevails over darkness." Leon looked around, still trying to process what was happening. "Why am I here?" "Because we need your help," Michael said, his expression grim. "The light of this city is fading, and with it, the light of the mortal world. If the light goes out, darkness will consume everything. We angels have tried to find the cause, but we are too far removed from your world to understand." Leon's brow furrowed. "And you think I can help?" "I know you can," Michael said. "You are pure of heart and brave of soul. You have the strength and the will to pass the trials needed to restore the light." "What trials?" Michael gestured to the city around them. "The city is powered by the light of faith, drawn from the mortal world. But something has gone wrong. The connection between our worlds has weakened, and the light is fading. To restore it, you must pass through the 3 trials of the City of Holy Light, each one testing a different aspect of your spirit." Leon hesitated, but he had always been a man of action, not one to shy away from a challenge. "What happens if I fail?" "Then the light will fade completely, and both our worlds will fall into darkness." Leon took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Then I won't fail." Michael smiled faintly, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Good. Your first trial awaits you in the Temple of Purity. There, you will face your deepest fears and regrets. Only by trusting in the light within you can you pass." Leon nodded and followed Michael through the glowing streets of the city. As they walked, he couldn't help but notice how dim the light had become. The once brilliant glow that had illuminated every corner of the city was now faint, casting long shadows on the buildings. Even the angels they passed seemed less radiant, their wings drooping, their eyes filled with uncertainty. Eventually, they arrived at the Temple of Purity, a grand structure made of gleaming white stone and crystal. At its center stood a great door, adorned with symbols of light and purity. "This is where your trial begins," Michael said, his voice solemn. "Remember, the light within you is your greatest weapon. Trust it, and you will succeed." Leon nodded and stepped forward, pushing open the great door. As he entered, the door slammed shut behind him, and the world around him shifted. He was no longer in the City of Holy Light. Instead, he found himself standing in a dark, narrow corridor, the walls closing in on him. The air was thick with tension, and a cold wind whispered through the darkness. Ahead, he could see flickering lights of torches, perhaps, but they seemed distant, almost unreachable. And then, from the shadows, came a voice. "Leon, a broken bar." He froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The voice was familiar, painfully so. It was the voice of his younger brother, Caden, who had died years ago during a raid on their village. "Leon, why didn't you save me?" The voice was filled with pain, accusation, and grief. Leon clenched his fists, forcing himself to move forward. This was the trial of the shadows of his past, the regrets he had carried with him for so long. "I tried," Leon whispered, his voice hoarse. "I tried to save you." The shadows around him swirled, taking shape. Suddenly, he was back in his village, standing in the middle of a burning street. The sound of screams filled the air, and all around him, dark creatures prowled, their eyes glowing with malevolence. And there, in the center of it all, was Kaden, lying on the ground, bleeding from a deep wound. Leon rushed forward, but no matter how fast he ran, the distance between them never seemed to shrink. "You failed me," Kaden's voice echoed in his mind. "You let me die." Leon stopped, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His heart ached with the weight of his guilt, his failure. But then, something stirred within him, a faint glow, a spark of light. He closed his eyes, focusing on that light, letting it grow. The glow within Leon's chest began to expand, pushing against the darkness that surrounded him. The voices, the accusing whispers, and the agonizing images of his past began to fade as he focused on the light. It was not the light of the angels, but something deeper, his own strength, his own spirit. He had carried the burden of his past for so long, but here, in this place, he began to understand that holding on to the guilt wouldn't bring his brother back. "I didn't fail you, Kaden," Leon said, his voice stronger now. "I fought for you. I fought for all of us." The shadows trembled as the light inside him grew brighter, pushing them back. The burning village, the creatures, and his brother's lifeless body dissolved into nothingness, leaving him standing alone in the corridor once more. The torches ahead were no longer distant, they were within reach, and the oppressive weight that had hung over him since the day of his brother's death lifted, replaced by a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. He moved forward, his steps sure and steady. The corridor widened, and soon he found himself standing before a massive set of doors, their golden frames shimmering faintly. Beyond them, he sensed the next trial awaited, but he no longer feared it. The light within him, the one he had learned to trust, would guide him through whatever lay ahead. The doors creaked open, and he stepped into a grand hall, its walls lined with towering statues of angels, their faces stern and watchful. In the center of the hall stood a single figure, clad in silver armor, wings folded behind him, a being of immense power and authority. Seraphiel. Leon had seen him before, briefly, during his arrival in the city of Holy Light. There had been something unsettling about him then, a quiet arrogance in the way he held himself, and now, as they stood face to face, Leon could feel the weight of Seraphiel's gaze upon him. "So, the mortal succeeds in his first trial," Seraphiel said, his voice cool and distant. "I must admit, I didn't expect you to make it this far." Leon said nothing, waiting for Seraphiel to continue. "You're here because Michael believes in you, believes that a mortal can restore the lights of this city," Seraphiel went on, circling around Leon like a predator stalking its prey. "But tell me, human, do you believe in him? Do you believe in the angels and what we stand for?" Leon frowned. "I believe in what's right. If the light fades, both your world and mine fall into darkness. That's all I need to know." Seraphiel smiled, though it was not a smile of warmth or understanding. "You think it's that simple, that by restoring the light, all will be well again? You don't understand the truth of what we are. Angels are not the benevolent protectors Michael makes us out to be. We are beings of power, and power comes at a cost." Leon tensed. There was something in Seraphiel's voice, a bitter edge that hinted at something darker. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that the light of this city isn't fading by accident. It's fading because it was never meant to last forever. This city draws its power from the mortal world, your world, and over time, that power has been depleted. Every prayer, every act of faith you mortals offer feeds this city, but it's never enough. And now, we're running out." Leon's heart raced. "What do you mean, running out?" Seraphiel stopped in front of him, his eyes gleaming with cold certainty. "The angels have been draining the mortal world for centuries. The light that sustains this city is not divinity, it's taken from humanity. That's the real reason the light is fading. The connection between our worlds is broken because we've taken too much." Leon's mind spun, struggling to process what he was hearing. "Michael didn't tell me that." "Of course he didn't," Seraphiel said with a sneer. He's too blinded by his faith in humanity to see the truth. But I see it. The only way to truly restore the light is to stop this foolishness, to let the light die and allow the strongest to survive. Humanity has grown weak, dependent on us for too long. Leon's fist clenched at his sides. You're wrong. People are suffering because the light is fading. Letting it die won't make things better, won't it? Seraphiel asked, his tone mocking. Perhaps the weak will suffer, but the strong will rise. That's how it should be. Leon took a step forward, his eyes blazing. I won't let that happen. Seraphiel's smile vanished, replaced by a cold fury. You think you can stop me, mortal? You think you can defy the will of the angels? I don't care about your will, Leon shot back. I care about saving my world. And if that means going against you, so be it. For a moment, the two stood in silence, the air between them crackling with tension. Then, without warning, Seraphiel lunged, his wings unfurling in a burst of silver light. Leon barely had time to react, raising his sword just in time to deflect the angel's blow. The force of the impact sent him staggering backward, but he regained his footing quickly, bracing himself for the next attack. Seraphiel was relentless, his strikes fast and precise, each one fueled by centuries of battle-hardened skill. Leon fought back with everything he had, but it was clear he was outmatched. Seraphiel was stronger, faster, and far more experienced. Every time Leon thought he had an opening, the angel was already 2 steps ahead, countering with a swift blow that left Leon struggling to keep up. But Leon refused to give up. He had faced worse odds before, and he wasn't about to let this be the end. The light inside him flared, giving him the strength to keep fighting, to keep pushing back against the overwhelming power of his opponent. As the battle raged on, Leon began to notice something. Seraphiel's attacks, while powerful, lacked the precision they had at the start. The angel's movements were becoming more erratic, his strikes less controlled. Leon realized with a start that Seraphiel was not invincibly. He, too, was being affected by the fading light. With renewed determination, Leon pressed the advantage, dodging Seraphiel's next attack and countering with a powerful strike of his own. His sword slashed across Seraphiel's chest, drawing a line of golden blood. The angel staggered, his eyes wide with shock. You a broken bar, Daria broken bar, Seraphiel growled, his voice trembling with rage. Leon didn't hesitate. He charged forward, his sword blazing with light, and struck again, this time knocking Seraphiel to the ground. The angel lay there, breathing heavily, his once pristine armor tarnished and dented. This isn't over, Seraphiel snarled, but there was no fight left in him. Leon stood over him, his chest heaving with exhaustion. It is for you. Seraphiel's wings twitched, but he made no move to rise. Instead, he glared up at Leon, hatred burning in his eyes. You may have won this battle, mortal, but you won't save the light. The truth will destroy you. Leon sheathed his sword, his gaze steady. Maybe. But I'm not going to stop. Without another word, Leon turned and walked away, leaving Seraphiel lying in the dust. As he exited the hall, the weight of what he had just learned pressed heavily on his mind. The angels had been draining the mortal world's light for centuries, and now, the consequences of their actions were finally catching up to them. But there was no time to dwell on it. The final trial awaited. Leon's steps took him to the heart of the city of holy light, a place known as the Chamber of Forgotten Stars. It was a place even most angels didn't know existed, hidden deep within the city's core. Michael had not mentioned it, but Leon had heard whispers among the angels as he passed through the city, whispers of a chamber where the true source of the light could be found. He wasn't sure what awaited him there, but he knew one thing: if there was any hope of restoring the light, it lay within that chamber. The entrance to the chamber was unassuming, a simple stone doorway carved into the side of a cliff that overlooked the edge of the city. Leon approached cautiously, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. As he stepped through the doorway, the world around him shifted once more. The chamber was vast, larger than he had expected, its walls lined with glowing orbs of light as stars, forgotten by time. In the center of the chamber stood a single pedestal, upon which rested a small, flickering flame. The light. Leon approached the flame, his heart pounding in his chest. This was Ida, the source of the city's power, the light that had sustained both the angels and the mortal world for so long. And it was dying. He reached out, his hand hovering over the flame. It flickered weakly, its warmth barely noticeable. For a moment, Leon wasn't sure what to do. How could he restore the light? How could he repair the damage that had been done?